Hello friends, my name is Emile. Welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we're taking a look at some C-Class cars, and we are going to be kicking things off with the 2012 Dodge Charger SRT8. 470 horsepower, 470 foot-pound of torque, 4,365 pounds of weight. This car is 500 in PI. It is the highest PI C-Class car in the game. There is none higher than this from factory as of right now. Of course, this is a four-door Charger. These debuted in 2006, and I've got to be honest, through the years, they've gotten a little bit uglier. I've always much preferred the original 2006 four-door Chargers, but I do like these cars, and they're certainly a lot better in my book than the Challengers. Never really been a huge fan of the redesigned Dodge Challenger, but the Charger, yeah, it's a cool car, and I do actually quite like the fact it is a four-door saloon now. As far as the Charger goes to drive, it is heavy, as you'd expect. It's by far and away the second heaviest car here today. The only reason it isn't the heaviest is because we've got a bit of an interesting one coming up for you in a second. But yeah, the Charger, it is heavy, it is very, very torquey. 470 foot-pound of torque, again, by far and away the second torquiest vehicle here today. All of its power comes from torque. It is just pull with this car. It is just pull and pull and pull, and that's what you get with the Charger. It is quite a fun thing to drive. It basically drives as you'd expect. It is very much still a muscle car underneath the sort of more practical exterior. So, yeah, like I said though, I am quite a fan of these four-door Chargers. Next up, we have the 2013 Mercedes-Benz G63 AMG. I told you something interesting was coming. 603 horsepower, 737 foot-pound of torque, 5,688 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful, most torquey, and the heaviest vehicle here today, unsurprisingly. I wanted to run an SUV in this because there's quite a few options when it comes to C-Class SUVs. This particular one is C497. You can opt for the BMW X6, the X5M, there's another one as well that escapes me. There's a Range Rover in there as well. However, I figured after all of it, the G-Class would be the one most people would want to see, because this is an absolutely mental prospect. It is essentially a 70s Jeep with a Saturn V rocket in it. It is a pretty insane bit of engineering. 737 foot-pound of torque is ridiculous. As far as it goes to drive, it is odd. It is very odd, as you'd expect, actually. It is hugely quick. Hugely quick. The weight doesn't matter because this thing shifts quick. It's by far and away the quickest car in a straight line here today. Off the line, it does 0 to 60 in about 3 and a bit seconds. It's that quick. It's very unsettled to drive though. You can sort of see the suspension bucking and rocking around. It doesn't handle very well. There is no getting around this car's size, there's no getting around this car's age, but yeah, as a bit of fun, it is rather good. Next up, we have the 2011 BMW 1 Series M Coupe, 355 horsepower, 332 foot-pound of torque, 3,296 pounds of weight. This is C48.6 in PI. The 1 Series M, a car I've never really been a huge fan of. I like the normal 1 Series, the sort of hatchback I like a lot. The Coupes never really appealed to me, aside from the modern M2. But, yeah, this one, I think it just looks completely out of proportion, a little bit odd. It's really not helped by this sort of fake tan orange that it's got going on. Not a good looking car at all, in my book. And statistically, it's not particularly overwhelming either. It is about as average can be. As far as it goes to drive, though, it is a very, very good car. I did quite like this one. It is a really nice neutral handling car, very solid. I don't think I've described neutral in this iteration of Top Gear Laps. What I mean is it doesn't really have any bias towards understeer or oversteer. There's a little bit of that in there, but you very much get a feel for it regardless. It's, you know, not biased to one or the other, and that does make it quite a nice vehicle to drive. You can chuck it around if you want to. You can seriously track race it if you want to as well. Yeah, pretty decent car. I would still much rather have the M2. When we go to drive that, I can't wait, because I can imagine the M2 is going to be a much better handling car. But the 1 Series M certainly is not bad. Next up, we have the 2010 Volkswagen Golf R, 267 horsepower, 254 pound of torque, 3,188 pounds of weight. Similar to the way we ran the G65, I did want to throw a hot hatch in here. Sort of a little bit puzzled on what to go for. Of course, again, in C-Class there's plenty of options, you know. I ended up going for the Golf R purely because it is all-wheel drive, so yeah, I kind of wanted to run an all-wheel drive hot hatch, see how it compared to the other hot hatch that's gone around, the Renault Megane. The Golf R, not a car I'm hugely a fan of. The Golf's just a little bit boring to me, and the R doesn't really help it. It is a really good hot hatch. There's no mistaking that. Four-wheel drive and all the rest of it. It is the smart man's hot hatch, but similar to the Audi R8, it just does not excite me in any way, and that's sort of what puts me off these things. As far as it is to drive, it's good. I mean, as I said, you know, it is a good hot hatch underneath. It just doesn't excite me in any way. It is, to be honest with you, driving experience is much like my thoughts on it. It's just a bit dull. There's nothing to really criticise about it, but is there any fun to be had here? Not really. I would much rather go for one of the front-wheel drive hatchbacks and have a little bit more fun. The Astra VXR, Ford Focus ST, hell, even the Ford Focus RS, another all-wheel drive one, would probably provide a bit more fun. Next up, did want to sneak a classic in here, and I certainly bought a pretty good one. This is the 1968 Ferrari 365 GTB 4 Daytona, or as I'm just going to call it from now on, the Ferrari Daytona. 405 horsepower, 365 foot-pound of torque, 3,600 pounds of weight. They're pretty interesting figures for a car from 1968. That's actually quite a lot of power. That's more power than a new Infiniti G60. I mean, of course, the weight, it does weigh about as much as a modern Infiniti G60 or Q60 as well. So, yeah, pretty interesting all-round car is the Daytona, and it's very interesting to drive. It is... You can sort of tell by watching it here. The suspension on this thing, it is incredibly soft. It is. It makes no qualms about the fact that this was a GT cruiser. The brakes are awful. Coming from the Golf R into this was a real step back in braking performance. You can see it go a bit sideways there. However, the Daytona, I can't deny, it is modern day car quick. It is really very quick. You know, if you put this in a drag race against, as I mentioned, you know, the Infiniti Q60 or hell, even that 1 Series M Coupe we've had, this would annihilate that 1 Series. It is properly quick, which is really a very good testament to it, I guess. Next up, we have the 2005 Lotus Elise 111S, or 156 horsepower, 129 foot-pound of torque, 1,777 pounds of weight. Unsurprisingly, it is the least powerful, least torquey, but it is by far and away the lightest car here today. In fact, most of the cars here today, you could stack 2 of these on top of each other, and they would weigh less. The Elise is, of course, a very light car, a sports car legend at this point, of course, the Elise, coming out 21 years ago, I believe. Yeah, and it's not hard to see why, you know, the Lotus Elise has always offered pretty good fun for the price. Admittedly, I'm not a huge fan of these Mark II Elises, and I can't say I've ever really been blown away driving them. However, today, this one really impressed me. It is super tight handling. You can go around corners quicker than pretty much anything else here today. The only car that would really give this thing a run for the money through the corners is the 1 Series M, and that would really struggle trying to out-corner this car. It is super tight. It is really quite easy to drive as well, which was quite remarkable. Lotuses usually are very quick around tracks, but they do like to have a bit of a wrestle for you. Not this. If you want to learn how to drive sort of a super light, super tight car, go for this one. If you want an easy-to-drive Lotus, have this Elise. It's not the quickest in the world. It is quite slow, actually, but it is a great car to drive. Next up, a bit of a cock-up on my behalf. This is the 2005 Dodge Neon SRT for 230 horsepower, 250 foot-pound of torque, 2,984 pounds of weight. Admittedly, I was trying to sort of use each manufacturer sparingly in these class episodes, you may have noticed. You know, I'm not trying to use too many cars from each manufacturer. And then I got to the editing suite and realised that I've used 2 Dodges. Yeah, not a good thing on my behalf. Admittedly, the 2 Dodges are very dissimilar. One was the Charger, which is a big muscle car, and the SRT4 is not a big muscle car. However, just like the Charger, it is rather insane. In fact, the SRT4 is even more insane. It is turbo all the time. Turbo blow-off noise all the time. It is bright purple because I painted it bright purple to suit its mentalness. It also has some rather interesting modifications if you delve into there. As far as it is to drive, it is mad. It's fine. It's not quick. There is no doubt in my mind. It's very much like that Shelby Omni we had last time. Not a quick car. But unlike the Shelby Omni, which was just down to a bad differential, this is just down to it being a bit mental. It is an understeer machine. It has too much power for this chassis. The Neon never really had the best of chassis, and sticking 230 horsepower for it, while by today's standards seems tame. That's about what they did to the Astra VXR, and the Astra VXR didn't turn out any well, and neither did the Neon, so it's certainly an interesting experience to drive. And finally today, we have the 1987 Ford Sierra Cosworth RS 500, 224 horsepower, 206 foot-pound of torque, 2,734 pounds of weight, the lowest C-Class car in the game, C402. I've also just remembered I forgot to mention the PIs on the other cars. Oops. Anyways, yes, this is the lowest C-Class car in the game, and don't mistake that for its weakness, as we're going to see. I do like the Ford Sierra. It is a rather cool car. Of course, touring car legend, rally car legend. It has a big wing. Pretty much everything to say about the Sierra has been said and done, but safe to say I do rather like it, although personally I do prefer the Escort Cosworth. As far as driving goes, it is lovely to drive. This, I really liked driving this Sierra Cosworth. Super lovely. Just a nice chuckable car. You can throw this thing into the corners. And while it may not grip all the time, it certainly doesn't have the grip of the Elise. It's always fun. It is a big amount of fun to drive this. It's solid, it's neutral. It is, in my mind, probably out of every car here today, this is the one I would take home. This is the one I would drive around a lap afterwards, because this, to me, is the best car here today. You know, some are grippier, some are quicker, but, you know, it certainly is not the last is least. Anyways, moving on to the board, the 1 Series M is the fastest car today, going into 5th with 124.696. The Charger SRT 8 is just behind that, going into 6th with a 125.046. Surprising that the 1 Series beat the Charger. The Golf R does really very well as well, going to 7th place with 126.216. The biggest surprise on the leaderboard today comes in the form of the Lotus Elise. It goes into 8th for 126.818. I knew it'd be quick, but this is the third least PI in a car here today, and it's right up towards the higher PA cars, which is pretty good. In 9th, we have the Ferrari Daytona, 127.147, purely on its speed. Speaking of purely on its speed, the Mercedes-Benz G63 AMG goes into 10th for 127.366, an absolutely mental machine. And finally today, speaking of low PI cars doing well, in 12th, Ford Sierra Cosworth RS 500, 127.481. Doesn't seem that impressive, but, you know, I'm pretty impressed. That's almost beating that Renault Megane as well, so pretty good time from the Cosworth, all things considered. It does, of course, also beat the 300ZX Twin Turbo, which was the highest D-Class car. So, yeah, no real upsets PI-wise on that front. However, as we move down the board, there is one upset, and it's the Dodge Neon SRT 4, surprisingly. Goes in 16th place with 128.610, being beaten by D-Class cars like the Alfa Romeo Giulietta, Acura Integra, and so on and so forth. Admittedly, the Neon hasn't got particularly much PI. C415 is the PI on the Neon, but even still, yeah, wasn't expecting that car to be quick, and unsurprisingly, it wasn't. Anyways, friends, thank you all very much for watching this episode of Forza Top Gear Laps. Next time, we're going to be taking a look at some B-Class cars, so join us for that. Until then, farewell.